beyond what he took in through his eyes.
"You can turn on the light,"
he said. I didn't answer. I walked over to his desk. His papers were organized into 5 or 6 piles, handwritten equations, graphs, random numbers, the usual. One sheet had a table that took up the whole page. That wasn't unusual. Even the walls were plastered with tables. But its name caught my eye. The Happiness Index. "What's this?" I asked.
"Statistics."
I picked up the sheet and turned it over. The table continued on to the other side. It was a list of 149 countries in order of their average happiness index. The first on the list was Costa Rica. The last was Togo. Lines 127, 128, 129, and 130, Bulgaria, Burkina Faso, Congo, and the Ivory Coast, respectively, had been highlighted in green. "What's the happiness index?" I asked. Xavier flopped back on the bed and lay back on the comforter, his hand that held the cigarette hanging off the side. He closed his eyes.
"It's not very interesting as a stat. It lacks objectivity," he said. "But it's the best we have. It's based on a survey with just one question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how satisfied are you with life on the whole?"
He took a puff on his cigarette. Smoke slipped slowly from his nose. Then he added,
"I suspect most people who respond don't take the survey seriously, because most people don't know shit about happiness."
"Can you believe it, Almodovar? Xavier, the most miserable bastard in this entire city, the darkest soul I've ever met in my life, has decided to play the happiness guru. I could have devastated the guy in a matter of sentences, you know. Instead, I just said, 'So what's happening in Bulgaria, Burkina Faso, Congo, and the Ivory Coast?'
That's where the average happiness index is 4.4. The same as mine."
"You answered the survey?"
"Of course."
He was lying motionless on the bed, his cigarette pressed between his lips, vertical. He opened his eyes and closed them again. I asked the only question I could summon. "Why?"
"Because I like to quantify things in life, in the world. You know who I am."
"You're not scared of what it might mean?"
"I'm more scared of not knowing."
"So?"
"So what?"
"So your happiness index is 4.4 out of 10. What does that mean?"
My score was 4.43672, to be precise. And among other things, it means that I should move to Bulgaria or Burkina Faso or the Congo or the Ivory Coast.
"Why?"
Xavier rolled over and stubbed out his cigarette in a saucer on his bedside table that was already overflowing with butts. "I have a theory," he said.
"What's that?" For the first time in recent memory, I was genuinely interested in something Xavier had to say.
"A man moves to a country where the average happiness index is the same as his," he began. "Once he's surrounded by people whose index matches his, he feels more at home in his new community, more accomplished than he is. In other words, he's happier. His happiness increases to match the level of another country farther up the table. Then the man in question moves on to the new country, if only because he no longer feels at home where he is. In this next country, the man again feels completely comfortable, which again increases his happiness index, forcing him to move on to a country farther up the table, and so on. Finally, the man in question will end up living in the country at the top of the table and will be as happy as it's possible to be on this planet."
There was a long silence. "Do you really believe that?" I finally asked.
"It's a theory. Even I know it's not that simple."
"So you're not moving to Burkina Faso?"
"Probably not,"
he replied. "You don't want to move up the table?"
"Of course I do."